is up, guys? So in this video, we're going to be building a shed base frame for my modern shed. So without wasting time, let's get into it. Hey guys, so as you saw from the intro, my existing shed had a 10 by 10 concrete slab underneath it, so after demolition, we were all set to build our shed base. If you don't have an existing foundation, you can check out my shed foundation option video, which goes through the concrete slab and the gravel shed foundations, which are the most common. So if you have a concrete slab, you can actually frame your shed walls directly on that, and to do that, you would simply use a masonry bit to pre-drill through your bottom plate, and then use a Tapcon screw to secure the bottom plate to the concrete shed foundation. This is the same process you would use for a basement wall. But in my case, I wanted to give a little bit more separation between the slab and my shed just because I have clay soils and I didn't want to deal with moisture. So if we hop into the 3D model real quick, we'll take a look at the shed base, and I have a 2x4x10 as the end cap there and a 2x4x10 at the bottom on the other side as well. And then we have our 4x4 floor joists. And although this example uses 4x4s as floor joists, there are other ways to do it with 2x4s or 2x6s, so spend a little time doing your own due diligence. And if you flip over to the top here, you can see that we're using 4-foot by 8-foot sheets of plywood as the shed subfloor, and this is where you're going to need to start planning out your floor joist spacing. So in our case, we have 4-foot by 8-foot sheets, so you want to position your floor joists so that the end of a 4x8 sheet of plywood will land directly in the center of your floor joist. So I just peeled away one piece there, and I can show you here that the plywood arrangement is going to land directly in the center of the floor joist. So based on your shed size, you're going to want to spend some time planning out your floor joist spacing so that the edge of each piece of plywood is going to land directly in the center of a floor joist so that it's supported. If you're using 3/4 inch plywood like me, the maximum floor joist spacing is 24 inches. For this 10 by 10 shed, I needed 7 4x4x10s for the floor joist, and I needed 2 2x4x10s for the end caps. So we have all of our 4x4s, and we're going to cut each one of them to 9 foot 9 inches. So as you just heard, we're going to go ahead and measure each of our 4x4s to a length of 9 foot 9 inches. And once we have that mark, we will go ahead and transpose that onto each 4x4 with a pencil. Then we'll cut those with a miter saw or a circular saw. So here I am cutting the very first 4x4x10 to 9 foot 9 inches to be the first floor joist, and then I'm going to repeat this for the other 6 floor joists. Again, cutting each one to 9 foot 9 inches long. After cutting all of the 7 4x4x10s to 9 foot 9 inches, we're going to go ahead and cut our end caps, which are 2x4s, to a length of 10 feet. Okay, so at this point we have our 2x4 by 10 foot. If we go over here, it's probably going to be just a hair over 10 feet. Most of them are, so we're going to trim it now to get an even 10 feet. Just making the mark right there at 10. After cutting the first 2x4x10 end cap to an even 10 feet, repeat that for the second end cap. Again, marking 10 feet and trimming off as necessary. At this point, all of the shed base frame components have been cut to size, and we can start the assembly process. Now, to actually assemble the shed base, I recommend that you take both of your 2x4x10s that are going to be the end caps, make sure they're crown up, and then use clamps to actually clamp them together so that they're perfectly in line. Then, based on the floor joist spacing that you determined during the planning stage to make sure that your plywood is going to land directly in the center of a floor joist, you're going to go ahead and you're going to mark the end caps all the way across. Now, because this lumber was pressure treated, the pen and pencil I was trying to use to mark didn't work so well, so I switched over to a Sharpie, but the process is pretty similar. You're going to go down the length of the end caps and you're going to mark the location of each floor joist. After marking the locations for each of the 7 floor joists for my 10 by 10 shed, it's time to start assembling the shed base frame. So as you can see, I'm taking the front face of the shed, I'm taking the end cap, and I'm positioning it on the edge of the slab, and here I am taking the end cap for the back and putting it in place, and then I'm pulling in my floor joist and preliminarily placing them. Okay, so at this point, we have our frame. Let's just take a quick look at it. It's all assembled like this. We have our marks, so we have the end there, we have that, we have that, we have that, we have all of these aligned right there as we measured, then we have it on the end there, and then we obviously have it on the other side as well. So we have it there, see our mark, have it all lined up on the inside,
the inside, right there on the inside, the inside, inside all the way to the end. So the next step is just to screw it all together, and we'll do that right now.
Once the shed base frame has been laid out, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your 3-inch exterior rated screws and you're gonna screw through the end cap into each of the floor joists.
So what he's doing right now is he's making sure everything is flush on the same plane.
Use 2 screws per connection, as you're seeing here. Although 3 inches works fine, if you wanna go 3.5 inches, that's fine as well. I just recommend that you use 2 screws at each connection point. Some people might argue that nails are also fine as long as they're galvanized and rated for exterior use. And I would say that's fine, but I would go with screws since they're just a little bit more secure. And because this is the base, we want to start with a nice firm foundation. So after finishing with the front end cap and attaching that to the floor joist, we're moving on to the back end and doing the exact same thing. After securing each connection with screws, you want to make sure that the shed base frame is perfectly square. And to do this, you're going to measure the opposite corner diagonal measurements, and you want to make sure that those are equal. Make any adjustments as needed to get those measurements perfectly equal across opposite corners. If you live in a high wind area or if local code requires, you may need to secure your shed base frame directly to the concrete slab below. To anchor the base frame to the slab, I recommend you install a piece of 2-inch by 4-inch blocking between the joists as shown, then use a carbide tip masonry bit to drill through the piece of blocking and into the concrete slab. Next, take a 3-inch Topcon screw and screw through the piece of blocking and directly into the concrete slab, securing your shed base frame to the concrete below. I did this in 2 locations. At this point, it's time to install the 3/4-inch pressure-treated plywood deck. For this 10x10 shed, we're gonna need 2 full 4-foot by 8-foot sheets of pressure-treated plywood and then 4 partial sheets. Let's start with the full sheets of plywood first. Get them positioned so the sheets of plywood are flush with the end cap and also the floor joist on the outermost part of the shed base frame. This is going to require a little bit of back and forth until you're perfectly happy with how everything looks.
Okay, so as you can see, when it's perfectly flush with this side, it's gonna land you right in the middle.
And it's also flush on the front face. And here I am showing you that the spacing for the floor joist allows a piece of plywood to land directly in the center of a floor joist. And once you have the first full sheet of plywood in place, go ahead and use 1.5-inch exterior screws and install those into each floor joist every 12 inches or so on center. Here I am taking the second full sheet of plywood, and as you can see, I'm doing a bit of a stagger there. Again, make sure that the outside edge of the plywood is flush with the floor joist there.
So again, you'll see it's flush with the end here, and that puts us right in the center of this 4x4 for anchoring.
So after installing the first 2 full sheets of 4-foot by 8-foot plywood, you're gonna have to go and measure your partial sheets. So what I just did there is I used a chalk line to establish where I would need to cut this piece of plywood so that it fits in the corner. And after field verifying that it fit right, I used 1.5-inch exterior rated screws to secure it in place. And at this point, you're gonna continue to measure and cut your partial sheets to length. I recommend that you use obviously a tape measure and a chalk line to make even cuts. And if you want access to the exact partial cut dimensions I needed to build this 10x10 shed base frame, you can check out the link in the description. Here I am filling in the final 2 partial cuts and securing it with 1.5-inch screws into the floor joist below. Another helpful tip is you can use a chalk line to mark the joist location. That way, if you miss any of the 1.5-inch screws to secure the plywood to the floor joist below, you can go back later and make sure that all of your screws are gonna actually contact a floor joist. And at this point, your shed base frame is complete. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you exactly how to frame the modern shed walls, so definitely subscribe if you don't want to miss those videos. And as a quick reminder, if you want the exact step-by-step process I used to build this modern shed, you can check the link in the description. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.